right, folks, welcome to What's Your Story. I hope you're having a wonderful morning, a blessed time. If you're catching this after the fact, thank you so much for watching. Another great guest. Lady B is in the house. That's right. Lady Bellfire is in the house. And you know what? We're just going to talk about her story, talk about some of the cool stuff that she's done and that she's doing. And hopefully you can just find some encouragement for yourself that you can get into this little YouTube and Lady B, isn't it a little surprising? And also like the coolest part is how welcoming all of this is. Like I'm just
I
still in awe about it.
yeah, I have got to say, I kind of got into it because, like everything that happened with COVID kind of derailed like my sort of life plans, and I kind of got black pilled for a while. I was very depressed, and then I started reading again, and I read Wheel of Time, and then I kind of like, this is an interesting series, and I kind of found some communities, and I ended up on the White Cloaks Discord, and there were a lot
Mhm.
of nerds there, and we had a lot of nerdy things in common. And they're like, "Hey, you want to come on our rewatch show and talk about how awful the Wheel of Time show is?" And yeah, that was my first foray into YouTube. And then one of the guys from their pips, he asked me, since I love Game of Thrones and I knew a lot about it, he's like, "Hey,
Mhm.
let's review House of the Dragon together." And
Yep.
so we did that, and we would basically kind of just interview each other and kind of debate certain things. And yeah,
That's when I
for,
found you. That's when I found you because I
yeah,
was,
I think
and I
for
think
this.
you're with me where you were really pretty hard on the show,
Oh,
and
definitely.
and
I have
I was
like the unpopular opinion of the show.
yeah, you do. You're a little darker than me because I've already off because I actually haven't done a video because I thought about doing like a hot take videos on some of my things where I'm like I don't I was never trying to say the show is bad. It's just that it doesn't hold a candle to Game of Thrones season 1, 2, and 3. Like we need to have some perspective. Like it's
Yeah,
not
there's
horrible. It's
definitely.
just not as good as you got. It's everything else is bad. That's why you love this one so much more, I think.
Exactly, and I kind of raised the point to Pips, and that is, it's like, are we just being conditioned to accept crap shows because,
I think we are. I think we are.
yeah. So when it came to do episode 3, he's like, "Oh, surprise, Lady B, I can't do it with you, but you could just start your own channel and like do it yourself." And I'm like, "This
Sure,
sounds
that's what
fun."
I'll do. Sure, that's what I'll do.
Yeah, so by then enough people had watched it that they were like, "I don't agree with you. Let's talk about it." And the funny thing is
Mhm,
with that is I figured out how to do the recordings pretty fast, and
mhm.
I didn't do a lot of editing with those. I think in the future if I did something again, I'd definitely edit some of it, but I got them up there, and then people would watch it, and it's just kind of all downhill from after that, but downhill in a good way. Like we're coasting
Yeah.
now.
No, well, I mean, that's the thing too, right? You kind of have to find your lane, find your voice, and like you said with the editing, you got to find that balance. Because for me, that's why we record these because it was like taking the pressure off another stream or a pressure off trying to do them. No, I'm just going to record it, and it's like a template. It just unless something really bad has happened because I've had a couple times where audio glitches or whatever, but for the most part this is a drag and drop into the template and it just goes with all of its warts and all, baby. You just get whatever this old man has generated and we just keep it moving, just go on to the next one. But no, it's been really cool to get to see. I hate saying getting to know you, but it's like when you're hearing people communicate about so many elements of their life because over time you end up talking about things you do in your personal life and different things you've done in your career. And that's how I kind of like, oh man, I got to connect with her. And we've messaged about our love of farming and some other stuff that we
Oh
do. But
yeah.
I was like, wait, I gotta. And then of course, Zax is always an encourager. Zax is the best. And
He is. He's such a
he's
great
like,
coach.
he's the best. And it's like, you got to talk to her about this racing stuff. You really got to get in this because it's so exotic. Like it just
Yes,
sounds
I wore my
like
suit for you
you
today. I was
did. I'm so
like,
excited. Look, she's all decked
oh,
out.
I have my stars on here.
She's a working lady. She's behind the wheel doing some crazy stuff. So let's start at the beginning, like kind of like little Lady B and kind of like the early phases of love of how he ended up towards like racing and then also maybe some of the pop culture stuff. But we'll start with racing a little bit first.
Okay. Well, I don't know. They kind of happened at the same time. So,
That's even better. That's even better.
yeah, I was at UCLA and I have an English degree from there, and at the time I used to be a musician. I played the French horn. I was involved in like marching bands and orchestras, all really into that. But the problem with that is it's like a niche instrument and the orchestra community is very small, and I had been doing it so hard for like 5 or 6 years. I was just burnt out and I didn't really want to do it, and I went and became and thought, hey, I want to be in the music industry somehow and be involved with music. So when I was at UCLA, I was studying English, but I also took audio engineering classes through the extension program. So I ended up going and be like doing my like schoolwork by day and go working in the clubs in LA at night, and that was really fun. And I like me and my brother when we were in high school, we used to watch old world rally championship videos on
Mhm.
Speed Vision back when that was a thing. And I just love the cars. And I thought this is such an adventure. It's so fun. It's off-roading. And just to give you an idea of what rally is, it's one car on a track. It's not a track. You're off on like dirt roads, like mountain roads. Some of them are paved, some of them are not, some of them are snow. You're everywhere. You're in forests, the desert.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's like kind of urban courses, like the Monte Carlo rally in Europe is more of like you're going in towns and stuff like that. But mostly
Sure.
it's yeah, it's out in the woods and stuff, and there's a driver and a co-driver, and the co-driver reads you a set of pace notes, and the pace notes describe the road because you sometimes you can pre-run the course, but you're like it's always going to change because of the weather and how many cars have been on the course before, and you listen to the co-driver reading the note and sort of builds the course in your head. So corners are like left or right corner, and then one is the sharpest corner. So that would be like a really sharp hairpin, and then a
Mhm.
six is the fastest thing. So it's like a freeway on ramp or something. You just
Mhm.
hit the gas and go. And then there's all sorts of other descriptive things. There's crests, so little hills, um, drop offs, like if the road just drops
So
off on one side.
how did you go from, like,
Oh, okay. So
being in the
back
club,
to
you gotta connect by
I
dot
always
to
did
how
this
did it
with
get
my
behind the wheel?
yeah, so I was doing this with my brother, and we would watch it. And when I went home on the weekends, we would watch it on Sunday nights on Speed Visions, the World Rally Championship. And then for my like graduation present to myself, I'm like, hey Mike, his that's my brother, and I'm like, hey Mike, we're gonna go down to Rally Mexico. It was the first time they had a rally in North America since like the 80s. And it was just kind of a whirlwind trip. And we went there. We were there for 3 days. I rented a car. Dude, like, I mean, I could speak Spanish, but when I went there, no one spoke Spanish to me. So, but it was really fun. And we met a bunch of wonderful people. We met a lot of the drivers. The drivers were really cool. And I just had such a fun time watching this that I'm like, hey, I really want to get involved with this. And I don't know if I said I wanted to drive. I thought maybe it'd be a co-driver or something like that. But the people I met at the rally were like, you know what, if you want to get involved, you should volunteer. And there were some local
Mhm.
races close to me. So I did that. And also at the time I was doing an internship on the Warner Brothers lot. And there were some other people that were actually, I think they were audio engineers too. And I started talking to them about that. But most of the time I'd see them on lunch and I just hang out with them because they let us wander in the studio and we would just end up talking about cars. So that was kind of interesting. So I after I graduated, this is really weird. I got into an honor society called Phi Beta Kappa, and it's like I'm just the person to give you an idea of who was in my class. Like Ben Shapiro was like inducted at the same time that I was. So those are the kind of people that are in
Wow.
this group, and they're all like, "I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I'm going to be like whatever." And I get
Lady
up
V's
there, and
like,
I'm
"I wanna
like,
race cars."
"I want to be a professional race car driver." And
Alright.
yeah, so I ended up graduating and I went to volunteer at a local race, and I was just talking to everyone. I had a blast. And while I was in college, I also worked on the newspaper and I did the radio station too. So I kind of that was what I was volunteering as, was like a radio hostess to go out there and talk to people out in the fields. And I would just call in on my cell phone and be like, hey, here's this driver. And it was really cool because nobody had done that ever for this
Mhm.
race. So it was really fun. And I met a bunch of people. And then I ended up seeing like, I wonder if anyone would want to teach me how to drive. And that's how I met my mentor.
Mm.
And he just took me under his wing, and he owned a paintball park in Riverside area, Corona area, and I would drive down there. I ended up working there on the weekend, and then after work I would practice, and he would teach me to drive, and I would practice, and I had I started off going to some of these smaller events at the paintball park in my like street car. And I would kind of sneak out and just say, oh, I'm just gonna watch, I'm not gonna drive. And then I would drive, and then I just go and like rinse my car off so my like parents didn't know.
Oh
It
my
was so funny.
goodness. Oh my goodness. So, but what a crazy sequence and journey steps to get you in these paths of things that you enjoy doing. Like it's
Yeah,
just
and
strange because we.
it's so weird because this was about I graduated college in 2004, and my racing career lasted from about 2004 to 2009. And this is why I say like my pop culture and everything was always like intertwined, but because I had experience like studying English, and I did radio when I worked at like the Warner Brothers lot and stuff. I was very aware of like PR and how to market yourself so you get more attention. So what I would do is everywhere. Now when I ended up doing racing and did like the national championships and stuff, we'd travel around the country. So I would go and send out press releases to these like
Mhm.
small town newspapers. And of course, it's like the coolest thing they'll ever. So they come out and see me, and like usually got a really nice write up. And I kept doing that. And I also made my own website, and I did all my coding and stuff for that. And I'd always have news and pictures. I had like, it wasn't called a blog back then. I just said it was my diary, but I would put up things about what I was doing with my car, like the sponsorship stuff I would do, like
Mm.
the just talking about practice or whatever, just fun stuff. And I had pictures and stuff like that. And it was really cool. And then I had I think I had a Facebook page too. I definitely had I think I had a MySpace page. It was that old. And it was really good. And because I was so savvy at doing PR, like I got a lot of attention and was able to do a bunch of interviews. Like I did Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, so I was definitely interviewed there. And it's not, I mean, there are not many women drivers in the sport at all. I mean, any motorsports, but yeah, it was kind of like a fluke thing. And I worked
Isn't
really
it?
hard at what I did. So it was cool because I was being successful on the track too, but I could also kind of like market myself. So that's kind of how the like pop culture and the racing thing were kind of intertwined.
How how would you encourage people? Because the marketing part is very interesting because it's like, and there's a lot of people in our circle who's like, listen, I just do this and do this. I'm not a personality and it's not a business. And you have all these different philosophies that are kind of intertwined together. And I'm not about trying to tell anyone which piece or which lane they should try to get into. But let's say they're trying to figure out how to market themselves. What's some of the advice you'd have on trying to send out a press release or try to put together information and or even just reach out to a bigger YouTube, whatever that means in their world?
Oh yeah. Okay. So this is something I definitely answer your question. Um the first thing I do is I want to like think about what your focus is. Do you want to do this professionally? Or like if you even if you don't think you can be a professional, do you want to be thought of like as a professional level? Or do you want to just do it for fun? And like having kind of a mission statement in your mind will help you kind of figure out
Mm.
what you need to do. Now, if you're going for like something that's bigger, like more business like, first, even you can be tiny and small, but think, hey, I am going to make this a business and treat it like it's a business. That's what I did when I started racing, even though I had like very few results. I didn't have the greatest car, is that I worked on branding myself. Like I don't know if you can see it, like it says Rally Star here. That was my team.
Mhm.
And I have like my stars on here, and I kind of like picked like livery for my cars. So my cars always like I wish I had a picture of it, but unfortunately, like, everything's in my shed, and it's been raining so much in SoCal that I don't have my stuff out. But I would decorate all of my cars the same way, and I usually had like a bunch of stars on the front, and
Mhm.
it always had my website on it, and um information about my sponsors and stuff like that. And from the get-go, I treated myself like I was a professional driver because that's what I wanted to do. It's kind of like, don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want. So
Oh,
you
very
first
good.
yeah, first thing you got to do is just accept yourself that you are a professional and act like it too. And that'll change the way you think about yourself too. And then work on creating like a coherent look. Like I had the same kind of like branding and stuff on my website, on my race car. I used to have t-shirts and stuff too, and I used to hand out promotional stuff. I mean, I don't know if that's really applicable in the YouTube world because a lot of people aren't.
I get lectured from Mrs. Pops that I don't have a business card. She's like, "Why
Yeah,
do you
cards
not
are
have
a
a
great
business
way
card?" Because
too.
it's just an easy thing if you meet somebody. You go, "This is the way." And I will admit that I've got to get that done because now that you have like, because YouTube did do like the brand thing, right? So now it's like it's just slash pops. Like it's so easy to do
Yeah,
at
that
pops.
was
It was
that
like, oh,
took them a long
thank
enough
goodness.
time.
Yeah, thank goodness. So but you're right. Dress for the job you want, right? So if you want to be 1,000 subscriber, you want to be a 4,000 subscriber, you want to make $100 a month or $400 a month, $1,000, whatever it is, you have to constantly keep looking at it, whatever your goal is. And maybe your goal is just it's just hanging out and having fun. There is no
Yeah, I mean,
judgment
that's
in
a
that.
different approach too, because,
Correct.
like, if what you wanna do is that and you have a bunch of friends that you hang out with, then, like, figure out what you guys wanna talk about,
Mhm.
like, a good way to have guests on your show if you're doing, like, live streams, if you're doing talking about nerd stuff or whatever,
Mhm.
like, figure out what your niche is and just make, I think consistency is probably the greatest thing to talk
Sure.
about here. I know as a YouTuber, I am not consistent at all, probably because I really haven't figured out what my niche is yet. There's a lot of things I like to talk about, but really don't enjoy a lot of the like just watching bad things. I like talking about good things and I like talking about writing a lot. And I don't really know how to translate that to YouTube yet. And I still
Hmm.
haven't figured it out. So,
Well, and there's not going to be a one formula for everyone kind of situation,
oh,
right?
yeah,
Everyone's got to
definitely.
find their voice, find their thing. But let me circle back to, oh, should I say that? Because isn't that what the one person said? I shouldn't use that phrase. That phrase predates her, by the way, just so we're clear. Let me go back to what you said about press releases or reaching out to regular media. Because as someone who was on the receiving end of that a lot, it was always cool to get press passes to weird things. And I got to be honest, the Pops channel was created in 2012.
Wow.
Nothing was done for like 7 years. I only worked on other people's stuff, but in 2012, I don't know what we were doing, but I was creating other channels for someone else and I was like the Pops on pop culture thing was kind of like my joke with and it was like I was already doing movie reviews for other people anyway. So I just made the channel. 7 years later, I got the press release emailed, and they called me at the same time, which is something you don't normally do. Don't do
I
that.
know a lot of people don't do that either,
Yeah.
but I think, like,
Oh, it
especially in this
worked.
day and age. Yeah.
It worked. It worked. I answered the phone, and they said, "Listen, we have all these movie cars at this Walmart for this thing that we're doing." They gave us this rundown, and I looked at my wife. Said, "Let me hang on a moment." I acted like I was all businessy, right? So hang on, let me put you on hold for a moment. You mind holding for a minute? Put them on hold. I'm literally on my cell phone. The mute button that was hold. And I'm like, baby, do you want to drive? It's like 30 minutes. And she said, well, how are we going to do this? I said, I'm just going to tell them the truth. I'm on the road. So I just told them I only have my cell phone. I'm not how, and that was how all this started. The first video was me covering this Walmart thing very poorly. And that was the first video just to say I did it to have this experience to go sit in Ecto One and the DeLorean and all this stuff I wanted to do. Same thing with you. Sending out a press release and let's say people are going to go I would definitely say people that are going to do meetups that are at like the conventions. You know how people are coordinating like meetups. I know with like MegaCon was in Orlando and they did like a
Yeah.
meetup and stuff. Listen, send out press releases to a couple people or whatever, and then just start seeing if you can get interviews and things like that. You never know.
Yeah, like, I've done total nerd conventions all the time, and if you were doing if you had a large enough group and you guys were, like, say, cosplayers, because that's usually what I did,
Mm. True.
and you knew it was going to be something really cool. I don't see the downside in doing a press release and say sending it to like one of these online magazines or maybe YouTubers and saying, you know what, we got a bunch of people and we're really into cosplay. We worked really hard on this, and you want to come and hang out with us? We're having a meetup whenever. Um, but like, yeah, that's a great idea. And I think it's just kind of like also looking for opportunities to do stuff like that if you're trying to promote yourself. And in terms of promoting yourself, since I did this so much, I would suggest to people is to figure out first what you want to do, who's your target audience, who you need to reach out for, and probably the best way that works both with your comfort level and your personality and the sort of, I'd say, medium that you're working in, and try to like figure out what your message is too. So like, let's say we're doing like a nerd thing too, and if this is something that everyone uses like forums or like Discord or Instagram or something like that, figure out how to do that and figure out how to join a group like that or like reach out to people, and then do it in a way that's organic for you, where you're not like trying to like maybe, I know a lot of people are afraid to approach people because it feels like they're like maybe asking for favors or something like that, but like make it like genuine and organic. Like you're not just being super formal or something like that. And in terms of press releases, like if you're doing something formal, you're going to do it as like a newspaper article, usually about 500 words. It's like, you know, who, what, where, when, why, and how. And you want to cover that, and you know, just put the important times, what will be, like who's there, like put all your links to everything. And
How do you all right, so let's say I'm going to do that. Let's say I'm going to all right, let's turn this on its head. iPops knows how to write press releases. Yes, I do. You want a press release done. All right, how do I put together a press release to say I know how to write press releases? How's that? Is everyone at home following me? I know. Bear with me. iPops knows how to write press releases. So I want to put together a press release to let you all know I know how to do that. Now what do? I make one up. I have it. How do I know who to send it to? What is your advice on trying to find uh,
your
the
target
target? The target.
audience kind
Yeah.
of thing.
How do you want to try to get to that like mailing list or contacts, or how do you cold calling, and how do you kind of do that to reach people?
Yeah, it's just gonna take some research. And when I was doing it, it was like, you know, it's the early 2000s. And I mean, like the internet was a thing, so it wasn't hard to find, but like certainly the world wasn't as online as it was. And what I would do, for example, is like I would write up, let's say I'm going to my local rally that they no longer do anymore, unfortunately. Thank you very
Mhm.
much, like LA County, like Forestry Service, um, Angeles National Forest people shut us down. But anyway,
Mm, mm.
I have words about that. But yeah,
All
so
right.
Rim of the World was out here, and depending on what I was trying to do, if I just wanted to let people know, and I was say if my goal was to say look for like media coverage, I would look at the local newspapers. Like if we're going to, like, that's up in Palmdale, Lancaster area, so I would say what are the newspapers for that. And it's usually like you could if they didn't have their emails, there's usually like a phone number or something. It's hard to imagine no one has email in this day and age, but I would find the contact and figure out who to send it to. If I didn't know who to send it to, I would just call and ask, because
Mm,
that's always important to make sure your information gets in the right hand. And I can say from being a reporter is that it's your half of your job is done for you if somebody gives you a press release and they're like, oh, look, there's something that I can cover. So
mhm.
when you're writing a press release too, you want to think about like, what is it people like, what do you want people to know about you, or what do you want to say about yourself? Because if you kind of like
It's copy
frame
and
it in
paste, people. I'm just let's just we're gonna cut. If you send me a press release and I'm gonna write an article, I'm going to take that article and I'm going to use, first off, if you email it to me, I'm going to highlight it and copy and paste right out of it. But let's just presume it's manual. I'm going to highlight pieces I'm going to cheat with. So
Mhm.
I have their press releases with suggested questions, like you have softballs that you want to get to. So uh, Lady B is going to ask Pops. And so, suggested questions. Pops, what are some of the shows that you do regularly? Could you discuss some of the different shows? You know, how do people get in touch with you? And you have all your socials and stuff listed already, so that people don't have to go look them up. Maybe, um, maybe some like generic questions, like Lady B would have a paragraph that would summarize that racing biography in like a paragraph,
Oh
like
yeah, I've
right,
definitely had my biography there, and
right,
most of the people would be like, "Oh, dude, it's a like young woman
hmm
who's racing," and
hmm
that's enough to bring them out. But sometimes I would mention things that I had, like my career accomplishments, like I had
sure,
won open two-wheel drive championships, open four-wheel drive championships. I did Pikes
right,
Peak twice, et cetera, et cetera. And so they're like, "Oh, this person is really serious. This is interesting." And I usually didn't have to do questions necessarily, but, like, I had enough information there that sometimes I would just write an article and they just straight up print it
hmm
because I had the journalism
do it
experience,
all the
but
time. Still do it to this day. Still, I have a website, and it's like I don't have time right now to be doing this thing. It's just sort of like keep it alive. And a lot of the content that I contribute is mostly press release stuff. And usually it's press release stuff, like you said, to be honest, I call it the fringe benefits of the job, right? It's they're going to send you a screener for a movie. It's a pass for this, or it's a gateway of a relationship for this or that, or whatever. And it's just, this is the circle of how media has a relationship with people. um, I think it's fascinating that you had so much of that experience and exposure in this part of your career, and yet now it's like we're just going to jump there. The fact that somehow, some way, this led to, oh, by the way, she's going to be tapped for this cars project that some company, I don't even know who this
oh,
company is.
yeah, so
I'm like, wait
this
a minute.
oh,
So
yeah,
how
I should
how
get to the story of that.
how did we get
Oh my goodness.
there?
Yeah,
Uh,
so I was because I knew like I mean at the time this was when reality TV was like at its peak and everyone was looking for like the next hit and I got so many requests for people to develop a reality TV show and I was always really reluctant about that because I said, "Hey, you wanna come around and, like, hang out with me and, like, film a day of my life? That's cool." And I actually did something like that for, the channel that eventually became, Vice, and, they did, like, a 30-minute thing, and, they followed me for one of my races, and it was really fun, except that was the race where, I was I was, driving extremely aggressively, and I was against a lot of really experienced drivers from Europe, and, I now America rally isn't huge in America, so to have, like, a good rally driver that's American is really unusual, and these were, older guys too, and I was really challenging them. I was going into, like, 3rd place, and I think I had almost won a stage, but I was doing really consistent times, and, I was just totally going to the max, and there were a few really tricky places, and there was an off-camber turn, and what that means is, like, cambered turn is let's say the curve goes around like that and the road goes in the direction of the curve. An off camber is when the road doesn't follow the curve of the curve you're going around when it goes the opposite direction. So instead of banking in like this, it's banking you out. And so I kind of slid into the ditch. I was going about like 60, 65. I hit a rock and I rolled my car 2.5 times. A bunch of rocks came in the windshield. I was on my roof. I broke my nose, which is why I have this like bump in my nose and some of the sinus cavities in my face. I was like bloody all over my
this is
suit
the
and
day in the
stuff like
life of
that.
Lady B racing. Yes.
Yeah, luckily my co-driver was fine and we had a really good like roll cage, so like we weren't really hurt other than that and having like whiplash and it was just basically from stuff coming into the car and that made the show, like, a lot more exciting, but, like, I had a great time filming that, and I
Mhm.
was very, like, "I am going to rebuild, we can be better, we can finish this," and, so we had a fun time with that, but to do, like, an ongoing episodic reality TV show, it's just, like I think if you've worked in the industry and you've studied this stuff, you realize that a lot of the stuff isn't necessarily unscripted, it's just, like, there are, rough plot ideas you have, and sometimes they like to create drama
Hmm.
for the cameras. And I
Right.
was a
So
very
just to interject, so if we were trying to take that scenario and make it a reality show, so like that was a really cool episode. So what happens next week? Well, Lady B is going to try to rebuild her car. But let's just say there's some parts that aren't in yet, and she's a little angry about it. So, let's just tell her that they're not here yet. Let's just see how she reacts. You know what I mean?
yeah, it was
It's
that
like
kind
they
of
just kind
stuff,
of
and
I
they
don't want they don't. It's not totally fake, but it's like kind of massage manipulated, and then it's
it's
over
totally
time drifted
manipulated,
in,
like, they were
and
like,
now it's
"Let's
drifted
do."
into like manufactured stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they'd want me to have, like, drama with other people, with my
right,
crew, and I'm like, "Look at you guys. What I do is extremely dangerous. People have died doing this sport. I need to trust myself and my co-driver and the people on my team to make sure that everyone stays safe. I am not going to do anything that's going to put myself or them at risk. So I don't want to have this like kind of manufactured drama stuff with people because that's just not who I am. Like, it's
right,
not my
right, yeah,
personality too, and I am just not that person because I wanna keep my team safe because that was always my concern. I mean, usually, my co-drivers were older than me, a lot of them had families, and I wanted them to come home in one piece and have a good time. So, I said, like, I was really wary with a lot of them, and then one of them I ended up working with, to develop a show in more detail, and she did a whole, like, kind of like a lookbook thing, and it had a whole bunch of stuff, and I this was really weird 'cause, 2008 happened, and a lot of people that was awful, and it was awful
mhm,
for me. I lost a lot of my sponsorship, and it was at a time where I was just getting to the point where I'd probably get paid to race, and I was really looking forward to that, and I was also looking into getting stunt driving jobs too. It's like
mhm,
one of the people that I raced with in rally, Reese Billion was, really good stunt driver. He did a lot of work on Fast and Furious, and he was like, "Hey, if you can keep doing this kind of progression and keep getting better and comporting yourself in a professional manner, I would like
mhm,
to have you be in this movie." And I was just really, really stoked, and I really wanted that to happen, but because of 2008 and all of the like shutdowns and layoffs and stuff like that,
finances,
they
yeah,
cut a lot of the sponsorship programs. So then I was like, I can't afford to do this. Racing is an extremely expensive sport. And I just kind of watched it wither away. And so, but what ended up happening with that is like I had done the last big race, was Pikes Peak, and um this producer, like, she just randomly calls me and saying, like, I've been kind of she had my like my story and stuff as a project, and she knows a lot of people, and like they're really good at networking, and eventually she was contacted by somebody who was working on Cars 3. And I think it was also like through Reese Mill and Racing too, because he also consulted on that and I knew them from there too. So it's like, see, it's all about making connections and
mhm,
keeping in
mhm,
touch and following up with people, because I through the synergy of these two people, I ended up getting contacted by the people from Pixar, and they invited me to come over and talk with them for a day. And they're like, "Hey, we'll give you a tour of the facility," and it was really, really amazing. And then we want to like interview you about your career for like a
mhm,
day. And I'm like, sure. So I took everything that I had and put it in a big shopping basket. I brought pictures. I had my reel. I had um, just every promotional thing I
mhm,
had. And I went out and I drove out there and they let me on. I had my little pass and they did pay me. So that was also amazing too. But what was really cool was when I went there, I learned about, like, development, and I didn't know a lot about that, and, that was, like, my first taste of what, like, filmmaking, development,
mhm,
screenwriting
mhm,
was really like. I mean, I knew about screenwriting because that was what my, internship was, but I didn't know about, like, the whole development stages of
mhm,
movies and what goes on in that, and that was so cool to see at Pixar because if you've ever like studied Pixar and how they are so effective at storytelling, they talk about the like mood color board stuff.
mhm,
And they have a huge wall in there where they have like the kind of different like scenes from that. their movies and like the color palettes that they picked to represent different emotions, and it was just
Mhm.
really cool seeing that. And then I walk into this big room, and there's basically like a table full of people looking at me with like a notepad and we talked for a really long time. I told them stories about like how I got into racing, like experiences that I had, like good and bad, um the kind of what racing meant to me and how it was sort of like freedom, and how I could get into a car and my car doesn't know if I'm a man or a woman. I just get there and go fast. And that's all that matters at the end, because I did have a lot of genuine sexist stuff happen to me, but
Mhm.
I never cared because, my results spoke for themselves and I just did my thing and I had a great time. And the end result is that a lot of what I told them ended up being the character of Cruz Ramirez. And when I saw the movie, I cried because they just straight up like quoted things that I said, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" And oh, what did I do with my? Oh, I moved her here. So this is Cruz Ramirez. She's a
There she
yellow
is.
she's a yellow Porsche, I think,
Mhm.
and she's just kind of quirky, and she's kind of like kind of like the intern chick at the place where Lightning McQueen worked, that ends up becoming a race car. And it kind of was like how I became a race car driver. And I drove a big yellow Evo 8, and I kind of have my little like Matchbox car
Aw,
here of
look at
it. I know
that.
it was like I feel so bad because I just need to go into my shed and find this stuff. But like, yeah, I had a bunch of cars, and like this was something somebody gave me. And this is the kind of car. This is a picture of my mentor's car. It's kind of like the stuff is so old and I've moved so many times that it's just really messed up. But this was his car, and I drove this car before. It's an Evo 7, and I had I drove a 6.5, the Tommy Mackinnon edition, if you guys know what that is. And then an Evo 8, and my Pikes Peak car was big yellow Evo 8. They'll look something like this. And yeah, and then there's Cruz Ramirez, and she's a yellow Porsche.
Wow, that's really but it's such a fun experience to know that something that you're that passionate about and you love in your life experience has been sort of like immortalized
Yeah.
in some way, right? So in some way you were this massive contributor to this character's development, personality, and even lines. There's even specific
Yeah,
lines.
and
That's really cool.
it was a really cool experience, and I didn't realize it at the time, but that was pretty much like the capstone of my racing career. I think the Long Beach Grand Prix after that with I used to drive an electric Shelby Mustang, or electric Shelby Cobra, and an electric there was like two different ones. There was one that was like hatchback and one that was a convertible, and this was before electric cars were really huge. And I had done Long Beach Grand Prix as like kind of an exhibition lap driving the car, and that was really super fun. And yeah, so it was like pretty much the last thing I did in my career. And I basically like just did my own thing. I got married, I got divorced over like 7, 8 years, and then when I was divorced, I was just like, I need a new start and I really want to go back to what I loved. And
Mhm.
that was like filmmaking and writing. And I had wished when I was at UCLA that I could have gone to the film school, except the way that UCLA works, it's like a bunch of different colleges under one umbrella. So if you want to go to film school, you have to apply to the film school. You can't be just like, I'm an English major, I'm going to transfer. No,
Mhm.
you got to apply. And so I had very limited funds to go to college, so that didn't happen. But then I remembered from being an audio engineer, hey, there's the extension program, and I could actually afford those classes. And there are a lot more practical things that I learned from having done it before. You'll get hands-on training and stuff.
Mhm.
And so I went back to the extension, and remembering my experience from cars and stuff like that, I'm like, hey, development's really fun. And I learned more about that when I was there, and I ended up doing a certificate in screenwriting and development and then production. And I had a really great time. And I found out I absolutely love doing the development stuff because, like, you, on one hand, you're like a coach to writers, and on the other hand, you're kind of like doing what they did when they were researching me,
Mhm.
was like finding things that could make a story even better than it already is, and figuring out how to make a script believable and stuff like that. So it kind of like came back full circle by showing me something I could do in my future that would give me a lot of fulfillment. So even though I
Yeah.
didn't end up working in the film industry because of a lot of stuff with COVID and other things, I still had a great time and I do not regret doing it because it definitely helped me as a writer.
So let me ask about your thoughts on folks that are listening to this. I know I hear people sell themselves short all the time, right? They just don't. It is our human nature to compare ourselves to other people, but I hear you talking about little, I say nuggets, but not to insult, pieces of life experiences that are like stackable. Like things are incrementally enhanced by something else that happens later. So yes, you were dabbling with press, media relations, branding, different types of performance and entertainment. And then later it's like, well, I want to do writing, production design. I want to do more of like the creative elements of it, but maybe not, front and center. How do people do sort of a checklist of skill sets? How do you take a step back and you start to
That
like,
is an absolutely great question, and I'm gonna give you some more background on myself. I've had a lot of like chronic medical problems since I was a child, and one of the things that I had was a blood disorder. And I almost died when I was in high school. I had a bleeding incident and I had to have a whole bunch of blood transfusions. And it really changed my outlook on life because I
mhm,
was about like 16 when it happened. And it really imprinted on me because everyone's a teenager and you think you're immortal. And I was just like, no, I have seen some shit to like put it
mm,
nicely. And so I and even though I am a person and I had a lot of self-esteem issues, like, probably up until recently, I would sell myself short, and, I just had that experience early on that was like, "Hey, you could die tomorrow. Your life could be, like, changed, and you would regret not doing something," and I think that really, like, led me to be, like, a more, like, fearless person that wants to try stuff, and, I have had so many setbacks in my life, like, sometimes it feels like I have been really successful at stuff, but I mean, I never achieved the kind of real true professional driving status that I wanted to, but, like, I was really successful in what I did, and I had a lot of setbacks, and I had to, like, rethink my life, and basically what I did and even now, it's basically like looking at things I already knew and trying to say, "Hey, how can I apply this to what I want to do?"
yep, there it is.
Yeah, and it's being adaptable, and it's being and saying, like, "Okay, if I failed at this, like, I probably quantify failure because a lot of people think like failure means like I didn't achieve the result I wanted to get, but maybe you didn't fail. You just ended up somewhere you didn't expect yourself to be.
Mhm,
And you
mhm.
kind of have to reconfigure that out and just realize that you can't give up and don't be afraid to try things. I mean, a lot of times people like they work it up so much in their head that you're like, hey, like, maybe it wouldn't be so bad if you didn't actually be successful in this thing, but you work yourself up so you won't even try. So
Is it realistic expectations?
I think it's being realistic, but also like realizing that like, okay, you can say I could say I'm gonna be a professional driver at the Phi Beta Kappa thing and have no idea how I was gonna do it, but I was really into it and I figured small incremental things that I could do every day to bring me closer to my goal. And if I had to say one thing, I would go back to, the, advice that one of the World Rally Championship drivers told me, Carlos Sainz, very amazing Spanish driver, and he said, like, "Don't get so focused on this thing that it's, like, your only thing in your life." And I did not take his advice,
Mm.
and I have thought about that a lot, and I think now I try to diversify, like, what I do, like, a lot. So I like doing YouTube, and in a lot of ways, I'm surprised I didn't do this earlier because I had the radio experience, the, like,
Mhm, mhm.
experience with racing and stuff, so I was kind of used to this, and, um
We've just been hanging out for so long. I really haven't been plugging. All of her stuff is in the description. So make sure you are subbed and then make sure you connect with her through Twitter. Just check it all out, folks. You're not going to be disappointed. Um,
Thank you.
but I think there's I say realistic expectations because maybe your goal, I mean, you may have said to yourself, I wanted to be this professional race car driver, but reality was you were racing amongst the professionals. Your definition of professional was that you were getting paid and you had sponsors and doing whatever, but reality was you were racing amongst the professionals. You just didn't see yourself as a professional. And sometimes our expectations get out of whack of,
Or
do
yeah, it's more like
yeah.
I wouldn't like I never it's that's a great point. I never even I thought of that, but it's like I wanted to have the kind of recognition, but maybe it was recognition enough that I was even competing with these people or meeting these people. And I met a lot when I was at Pikes Peak. I met a lot of the older, like World Rally Championship drivers from the 80s and stuff, and they were really awesome. And I had done the race enough that, like, they'd remember me when I saw them the next year, and it was really cool. And I had a bunch of friends. So I think in a lot of ways, I was really successful. And one of the things that I like to do is I'm not a huge feminist, but I liked going out and trying to encourage women who wanted to race to just try it because it's fun. And I wanted to empower them to try it and to stay at it if they liked it, because it's just one of those things, like, you think like, oh, I'll never get in this car and I'll never do it, but you do one thing, like you get into a race car, you do like a an autocross event or a rallycross event, and then you're like, hey, I did that and I never thought I would do that. And it's just one little, like, one accomplishment you can have that'll boost you to try something even better, and then you'll be surprised at how successful you can be.
Well, and you never, I mean, you said earlier you were racing alongside some really big names from Europe. So that's, I mean, again, it's perspective, right? Like we don't want to
Yeah.
always hang our hats on the accomplishment and see ourselves like, okay, Lady B, the YouTuber, is on how many panels with people who have how many thousands of subs, who are doing how many videos, talking, because there are people, oh, I'm not really a YouTuber. I'm not really, I don't really use, I'm just on other people's stuff. And it's like we innately seems like we're always selling ourselves short
Oh yeah, definitely don't do
definitional
that. I
stuff,
mean,
right? Definitional
yeah.
things.
Yeah, like, one of the reasons, like, I'm really happy with what I do now. Like, I usually am on every Wednesday night with Zax, and he's become a really good friend of mine. And I love doing that because we always talk about different things, and it's fun for me to participate in his shows because he usually picks a topic or whatever. Like last night, we were talking about Westerns,
Mhm.
and it takes the pressure off for me to do my own shows. Now, I have done a couple of live streams, and because of my background in filmmaking and radio and stuff, it's like I like to have the shows somewhat produced, so it's just easier for me to, like, be more professional when I put it on. And it does take time, and I just have not found that, like, balance, because I am taking Carlos Sainz's advice and making sure this isn't the only thing I do with my life. And I have my garden that I do. I also have a job, and I've had some changes and positive changes in my personal life that have
Mhm.
kind of changed my, like,
Mhm.
allocation of time. So I don't feel bad that I haven't been able to do as many videos as I want to. I'm definitely going to get there in the future with figuring out the creative direction I want to take myself. And I know when I figure it out, I'll get into the stride because I've learned what I need to do to be successful. And
It's the
I'll figure
experimental
it out.
phase in a lot of ways, right? It's like, and you said earlier, like you have a lot of passion and expertise in a lot of different arenas. And it's like, I don't
Yeah,
mind playing in someone else's sandbox, engaging those things. I'm learning different things along the way. I'm learning how Zach's run his show, how he creates a topic, how he runs a panel. I've played around
yeah,
with doing
and
my
he's
own
helped me with
stream. I've done,
videos.
yeah. So it's like a lot of the to-do lists and checkbox of things that you have to do. It's almost like the internship thing that you mentioned earlier. It's like I'm ticking boxes of some different things that I'm putting together.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to be, like, successful with YouTube is, like, be consistent. Like, if you're trying to get, subscribers, like, you need to figure out the algorithm things. That is not my expertise, so I cannot give you any kind of, like, advice on that because there are people that know a lot more about it than I do, but I think consistency is a big thing, especially if you're doing live streams. Figure out a good time, figure out like a good way to do your show. Like I also friends with Flaccid Phoenix, like Dawn and Gator, and they like to do the sort of like morning bros like show style thing, and they're really good at that. Part of
Mhm.
your thing is figuring out like what's your niche and then becoming the best you can at that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to again find your voice, right? But the consistency thing is like if you can kind of plant your flag around a certain day and time, then you don't have
Mhm.
to worry about the algorithm as much of this is the day and the time, right? This is the day and the
Exactly.
time. And I had to get my head around that too. I had to say, okay, I'm going to plant my flag here. And then I have other stuff that's kind of fluid, but I'm going to plant a flag there. I'm going to put a little flag there. And it's like, it just kind of build on what you can manage, whether it be one stream a week or one show a week, one video, maybe once a month, one it becomes every week, becomes maybe twice. What you have to kind of work with what you can live with. Like you said earlier, life gets in the way. There's going to be
Yeah, it
seasons.
does, seriously, and here's a great example. It's like I like talking about books a lot, and I recently, I did a stream last night with Copa Catania, and he's a film editor,
Mhm,
and, he's also gonna be a dad soon, so
mhm,
unfortunately, probably not gonna get to talk to him that much, but I found out that he also likes to talk about books, and we were
mhm,
talking about, um a book called Blood Meridian the other night, and we're like, "Hey, I haven't
mhm,
read it. I wanna read it. I've read other stuff by the author," and, we've had a really great time talking about other stuff this author wrote was the guy that wrote No Country for Old Men, and we had a really great discussion and we're like, hey, there's not that many people that like to talk about books, so I'm like, cool, I've just met another book person.
mhm.
And you got to kind of like find your tribe too, and it was fun because the first time I talked to him we were talking about stuff in Hollywood, like what it was like working there and why we didn't
Yeah.
want to keep doing it, or at least like he still does film editing, but I decided to walk away from it because it was just a really toxic community. And we talked about like the change in production stuff, and we're also talking to a like actor, director, producer, and we had a great time. Like it was really fun. And part of the thing with YouTube is just kind of finding your tribe, and you meet a lot of people and a lot of people that are really friendly. And if you figure out who you vibe with and what you like talking about, and take it from there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What do you you mentioned the book, but what are some of the other things that you do where entertainment seems like it's kind of failing you right now? What do you do for joy and happiness and
That's so
kind of
funny. I know. I used to when I was at film school, I was not listening to the advice that Carlos Sainz gave me, and I just
Mhm.
went full bore at it, and I would read the trades, I would watch a ton of movies, and
Ugh.
I
Ugh.
got like a totally like burned out on it. And
Yeah, variety's the same all the time. It's like they could just release the same magazines from the previous year and half those people wouldn't even know. They would not. They're just
yeah,
drones.
and
It's so
it was
sad.
always the people I was working with were like, "Well, you're expected to know these things and be like well versed on this." And then I like the peak of when I was there was when like
Mhm.
all the Harvey Weinstein stuff was happening. So
Oh,
that was like,
yeah.
oh, that was horrible. And I was just like, okay. And then COVID happened, and
Mhm.
I lost my business that I had, and I couldn't pay for film school anymore, and it was shut down anyway, so I just thought about it like, "Do I really wanna do this? Is this a healthy and productive environment for me?" And, um, I had a lot of changes in my personal life. I was engaged at the time, and that didn't work out because of the lockdowns, and, my fiancé lived out in the UK at the time, and, I still don't think he can fly over here to visit.
Mm.
Not that he would, we broke up, but, it was just really hard for me, and I got following, like, the news a lot and things that were happening. It was very, like, disturbing to me because I'm a very freedom and liberty-oriented person, and I got blackpilled, like, really hardcore, and I had,
Mhm.
like, stopped wa I mean, we couldn't go to the movies. I stopped,
Mhm.
like, watching stuff on TV. I really didn't
Mhm.
like TV anymore. I had, because I could see it from, like, a technical standpoint, what it that it was bad, and then I kept seeing, like, political messaging, and I was
Mhm.
just like, "This isn't what I'm here for." I just didn't care anymore, and I yeah, I got really black pilled, and what ended
But
up happening,
what's the good stuff though? What's the
the
happy place?
happy
What's the
part
happy place?
about
Happy
it
place.
is, I was watching a nerd erotic video that my ex-fiance had sent me about, like, George R. R. Martin is never going to finish The Winds of
Yeah.
Winter, and we're never gonna see this, and he was kind of a rant on George R. R.
Yep.
Martin that
Yeah.
was totally legitimate things. And so what people were doing in the comments was like, here's a bunch of other series you could read if you liked Game of
Ah,
Thrones.
there you go.
And one of the books series there was Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. And I'm like, I'm gonna read that. And I went down and I'm like, cool, there's like 14 books. And the library had at least the first three. So I checked it out, I read through it, and people like to call me out on this when I say I binge read these things, but I'm serious. Like, this is what happened to me. I took one of those books, and because it was August, like July, August, and in Southern California, it's super hot. There was nothing I could do in the garden. If I wanted to do anything, I just wait and do it at night. And so I had all this time to read, and I just sat down and just read through those books. It would take me maybe 3, 4 days to read one book, and I
Mhm.
would just do that all day. Like, I'd get up, I'd read, I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna water the plants.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna eat breakfast, lunch, whatever, and dinner," and then I would go do my, walking and then come back and read even more late into the night, and I really enjoyed the series because it's about, 3 kids from, like, a small town in a village, and, like, they have their 2 female friends, and it's kind of a coming of age thing. There's a lot of positive, stories. It's kind of like, high fantasy kinda thing where people, have to face, like, the end of the world, basically,
Mhm.
and they have to figure out how they can fight against evil, and, good triumphs in the story, and
Yeah.
there were some really key moments in that series that I needed to hear, and, like, one of them was, like, the main character, Rand, who has this immense power, and, he kind of has had so many bad things happen to him that he could either choose to go down the dark path or choose the light, and he kind of goes up to the Dragon Mount, what's called in the book, and he he kind of has this internal moment where he has to figure out what he wants to do, and he chooses
Mm.
hope, and
Mm.
it was very important.
Very
Sometimes you just
timely.
find things, yeah,
Very
when you're meant to
timely.
find them, and
Mhm.
it made me cry. I went out and sat in my garden for a long time, and I just thought, like, "Hey, like, there's good things in the world, and you need to, like, find them again," and,
Mhm.
it really inspired me to get, back into writing and,
Mhm.
to think about, like, maybe, like, things that weren't so, like, bleak, and to look at trying to be, because I've always been like that, even a lot of my, failures and, things don't work out the way I want, I'm not gonna give up. I just wanna keep, like, helping myself out and helping other people, and that's always really important to me, so um it was nice to come in and kind of, like, meet other people that have been feeling this way about the entertainment industry. I brought
Mhm.
a little different, viewpoint having worked in it and knowing stuff about filmmaking and writing and stuff, and I enjoyed talking about that, and it really kind of it saved me for a long time because, I felt really bad because it's like, okay, I failed as a race car driver. I failed at, like, the Hollywood thing, and a lot of that too has to do with, like, my health problems and stuff. I couldn't work the hours anyway, so I had to really think about that and how can I do this and, like, work around that, and I realized, like, really I couldn't. I could never work enough to support myself while also trying to do internships and all this stuff you're supposed to do when you're, like, 25, and was, like, 38 at the time, and, um so, yeah, the YouTube thing, like, kinda showed me that, like, maybe, like, it wasn't just a dream that was ended, it was a dream that could be transferred into something else.
Mm.
So, it was really good, and, I started writing again. I decided, "Hey, I can't write, I don't really wanna write scripts, I don't wanna work in the industry. Well, maybe I could go back to prose and write novels." And so I came up with this idea for a fantasy western, and I started
Good.
working on that.
See, we find our hope in different ways, and see, and I'm still gonna go back and correct you. I don't consider your race scene a failure or any of it. I look at
Oh,
it
oh,
as
definitely correct me,
no.
but,
So
like,
yes, because
yeah.
because to me it sounds like
It
All right.
wasn't,
Well,
but that's how
I'll
I
say.
think of it in my
All right.
mind, like, it's just
I'm
one
gonna try to
thing that didn't
reprogram
work
your
out.
mind. I'm gonna fight to reprogram your mind. It's a season of racing where you were racing among the pros, and yes, it didn't turn into a full time gig. It was a cool thing though that got you pretty close. You were semi pro. You were right there, right? And I say that because I could have tried to figure out a way to quit the day job and do media slash radio slash writing full time and get there, but didn't do it that way. It just never got there, right? And it's like the ground was
Yeah.
always very fluid, and you worked enough in Hollywood and stuff. You know how fluid everything is. Like, how do you bank on any of this? How you don't have any
Exactly, that was my problem too. It was like, I
certainty.
have, like, a chronic pain condition, and it's like, stress is a major driving factor of it, and to say here, like, it's like, this is like if stress was an industry, it's like the film industry, and I'm
All of
just
it,
like, for
yeah.
all the fun you could have with it, like, is this something that's sustainable for me? And I really kind of had a, like, come to Jesus moment and just thinking, is this the healthiest environment for me to be in? And I couldn't the answer wasn't yes. So I
And
kind
I'm
of
like
realized
you.
that.
I look at it as season stuff. It's stuff we did because I know we went to the Orlando meetup and we met other YouTubers and stuff like that. I forget who said something, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, we've been doing this." I don't know what I said. I sold it short. I think I said 20 years. And Mrs. Pops goes, "No, this happened, and that was when, the daughter was so and so. So that was more than 20 years ago." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it really was." And I'm like, but even though we didn't get to like this, whatever definition we've created for ourselves, I wasn't really a journalist or I wasn't really a race car driver and I really was this, or I'm like, yeah, but those are the definitions we've made for ourselves
Yeah, how do other
you,
people describe you?
because
And then
you
you're
raced
like,
alongside this racer and this racer and this racer. And I jumped the ropes so I could interview Ethan Van Sciver when he was at Marvel. And I met so and so and interviewed so and did all these different things. Like, to other people, they look at all that differently. We look at this as this negative failure, these whatever. And
yeah, it's
the
like
point,
it's weird because, like, I don't really feel that way now. Like, I look at what I did and I'm proud of what I did. I
yep, yep,
accomplished a lot. Like, I was
yep.
the first woman in the US to win a national rally, like, since
Yeah, it's pretty freaking
the
cool, man.
sport started in the 70s. That's a huge accomplishment. And a lot of people
Mhm,
thought, oh no, it was Michelle Mouton because she was a professional world rally championship driver from Europe in the 80s. And
mhm,
she did do a few races in the US, but she never won any of them. So
mhm.
I was like, "Oh my gosh," and it was really weird because people would always try to say, "Oh, you're, like, better than her. Would you challenge her?" I'm like, "Hell no." Like, I was like I was different because, I started racing when I was an adult. A lot of people start when they're kids, and they have years and years of
Mhm.
experience by the time they were my age, and I'm like, "No, I just kinda decided one day I was gonna do this, and here we are." So, it was, like, a lot of weird, and you're gonna imposter syndrome is a thing, and I felt like that a long time, but looking back at it now, I'm like, "No, I did a hell of a job for what I have," which
You
was,
sure
like, a
did.
shoestring budget and a lot of gumption. So
And to be honest, part of What's Your Story, because I have a whole channel that's called What's Your Story. Like, it's not just this show, guys. So you guys
yeah.
know Ryan Roger Athay is to blame for me having this segment on Pops because I had to use my own advice I gave him back on myself. I always say if I'm pointing one finger at you or you feel that way, just remember I'm pointing three fingers back at myself when I do that. So I'm talking to myself. And part of it was just actually just documenting these stories, just trying to put on camera, on the tube, whatever it is, Lady B's story, our conversation. I think there's so much value in that. Like, what will all of this be 10 years, 20 years, however, how down the road will people go, wait a minute, I saw this, whatever. And I say that as someone who's been, you guys know, I am knee deep in the middle of vintage cartoons, largely in part because of you people, just so you guys know. And I just saw this show that was like from the 50s that I didn't even know existed, all these news articles on it or whatever, because it was mentioned. I didn't even know frame of reference. So I think there's so much value in that there's some girl that may not think she could do it and she hears about Lady B's story. Maybe there's someone who's like, you
Yeah,
know
I've
what?
always been like that. Like,
Yeah.
I would tell people my, like, medical stuff. Like I try to
Yep.
like tell them my racing story just because I'm like, hey,
Hey.
talk to one person. Maybe that's all it takes to help them. And it's like if I could just help one person by telling them what happened to me in any of the phases of my life, like that
Sure.
is extremely fulfilling.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, it was a season. You did it for so many years, and this is what
Yeah,
happened. Just like,
I like
and
that
yeah,
season.
yeah.
That's a
And
great
it's
way
like
to think about it.
in the writing thing, it's like I did it, but I also see like the end game. I see the road where I was headed, and I'm like, I didn't want to end up there. And I'm like, I got a lot of value out of it. I learned a lot of things, and I can go, I can change and do something different. It's I think we all have a lot of that. And I want a show like this, and I want people that are listening, people that are in the comments, for you to look at it that way. Stop defining things as the failures and think of them as what are the check marks that you can put next to skill sets and accomplishments and experiences that you otherwise wouldn't have had. So, Bleedy
That's
B,
great.
we've gone over an hour and you've been amazing with your time and
Thank you so
storytelling
much.
and sharing so much personal stuff. It's been great.
Thank you.
Folks, make sure you connect with her. Make sure you're subscribed and check out some stuff. If you're not also watching Zach's Wednesday night show, make sure you're checking over to Zach. Throw Zach's link in there. I'm going to have to make a note to make sure I put Zach's link in there, or I will forget because that's how old I am. But thanks to Lady B. It's been awesome having you on, Lady. Guys,
Thank
if
you
you
so
have
much.
not seen it, make sure you check out her stuff. And thank you so much for being here, Lady B. And you guys, be blessed. Go out there, make tomorrow just a little bit better than today. Talk hard. Thank you again for watching. I am Pops.